At Sierra, discover top workout gear at incredible prices, which might lead to another discovery. Your headphones haven't been connected this whole time. Awkward. Discover top brands at unexpectedly low prices. Sierra, let's get moving.
This episode is brought to you by FX's The Beauty Official Podcast. Join host Evan Ross Katz on the official podcast for FX's hottest new series, The Beauty, taking you behind the scenes with its amazing stars as they discuss the show's most jaw-dropping moments. Featuring Evan Peters, Anthony Ramos, Jeremy Pope, Ashton Kutcher, Rebecca Hall, Bella Hadid, Meghan Trainor, Isabella Rossellini, Jessica Alexander, and Ari Grainer. Search FX's The Beauty wherever you listen to podcasts.
New Year, same extra value meals at McDonald's. So now get 2 snack wraps, plus fries, and a medium soft drink for just $8.
For limited time only. Prices and participation may vary. Prices may be higher in Hawaii, Alaska, and California, and for delivery.
If you're looking to get a new car, you could really cut expenses by bundling your car and renter's insurance with Progressive. Sure, you love your old car, but you know it's not normal to give instructions on how to open the window. It should be self-explanatory, but it's not. And notice how when you're in other people's cars, you can feel cushion in the seats? That's pretty nice, right? No, it's just normal. So bundle your renter's and car insurance with Progressive and put the savings toward a new car. It's time. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company. Coverage provided and serviced by affiliates and third-party insurers.
Hello, this is Jay Scott, and you are listening to The Hook, the Ultimate Rock Community Podcast. Hope everyone's having a nice summer day. I'd like to welcome our guest today, Ms. Sharise Brown, one of my favorite people. How you doing, Sharise?
Jay Scott, thanks for having me. Doing great.
I really appreciate you doing this. Thank you very much. So as we begin, we start the show the same way every time we have a guest and it's their first time being here. And that question to you is, just like every great rock song has a hook that sucks you in, every rock fan has a moment, whether it's a song, an album, a band, or performance that hooked you on rock and roll. What was your moment?
My moment. Okay. Well, I had some influence leading up to the moment, but the moment was definitely, we went to see, I went with my parents actually to see Kiss. It was a Kiss Alive tour, so it was 1976. I didn't know who they were. I hadn't heard them before. We had a member of REO Speedwagon in our family, so we, just had access to shows and saw them quite a bit. So they opened for Kiss, and we were backstage. So we were backstage every time we would see REO Speedwagon. I remember it was at night, and it was an outdoor concert. I remember it just kind of being like nighttime and all their crazy lights and a stage show. And I was a kid. I was like 6. So to me, all this was just fascinating, right? And the guys walking around backstage, makeup, costumes. I'm like, what is this? This is like my fantasy, right? But like when you think about it, and I think about it now, and I'm like, I was 6 and I was a little girl. Maybe most little girls would be scared by that. So that, to me, I think was a defining moment that I was like, I felt at home. Like, this is awesome. I love this. I want more of this. I love the music. I had not heard it before, but I'm like, these are my people. It did not hurt that Peter Criss gave me a piggyback ride. I don't really remember.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Tell that story.
Well, so you know how we got there, REO Speedwagon connection, and we were backstage. It's funny because I remember, literally I was standing right next to the speakers, couldn't hear a thing. I'm sure I lost hearing, as early as 6 years old, but, that was it. Another thing I remember is Gene was riding on Paul Stanley's back at one point, and they fell, the high boots and all that. Again, new to me. I'm like, these guys wearing these tall boots, huge, scary looking costumes, or what would have been scary, I guess, to most people. I loved it. It was like combination kind of haunted house, dudes wearing makeup, kind of dressed like, ladies or like dolls or whatever it was. I just loved the whole thing. And so they fell, like Paul fell, and they were backstage for like 15 minutes or so. Like the show was kind of interrupted. So I remember that. And then Peter Criss was really nice. I do remember looking over at him playing, and he waved. And these are things just like now.
So these piggyback rides were happening in the middle of the show, like they came off back, to go backstage.
So my piggyback ride from Peter Criss was just because he was a nice guy, and he was like, "Oh, little girl back here." We said 10 words to him or something, and then we went piggyback ride. It was awesome. But yeah, it was on stage that Paul gave Gene a piggyback ride, and they fell, because the boots and whatever. So they were backstage for a while. They came back out, and everything was cool. Gene did like the blood spitting and all that. I was like, what is this? But it didn't scare me for a second. I loved it, and I loved the music, just the hard, heavy.
This was the Love Gun tour? Or just
This was Alive.
Oh, this was Alive. So this was right before Destroyer?
That's right.
Okay.
That's right.
Okay.
And again, little kid, so I was probably 7 by the time Destroyer came out. I got it the Tuesday it came out. One cool thing, I'm very lucky that my dad was a musician, so no holds barred. Like if I thought something was cool, I loved Kiss after the show, and I got the Alive record, which I took, if anybody remembers, I'm sure plenty of people remember, the inside, the 4-page fold-out thing. I can hear the crinkling of the pages right now. All 4 of the members wrote letters to the fans, and it had pictures of them. So I took the inside of the LP, Kiss Alive, that little booklet thing, to show and tell. And I talked about my parents taking me to the concert and what happened. I think my teacher didn't say a word. I'm sure she was like horrified.
Back then, yeah, absolutely.
Totally, yeah. I mean, but my parents, like they were young when they had me, so they were totally hip.
What was your favorite Kiss song?
Oh man, it's really hard to pick one because I loved like Deuce, Cold Gin, 100,000 Years. I mean, it was Kiss Alive that kind of got me into them. And then when Destroyer came out, I remember like our record player was on top of this big antique thing we had, and I would sit on top of it. You pick up the needle, you start it over in the beginning if you want to hear a song again, whatever. And the very beginning of Detroit Rock City, where the car crash, you hear the car crash, like that came on, and I was just like, what is this? I mean, I love them. That was like my hardcore intro, I think, to like that kind of music. But the influences before that, I remember being little, 3, 4 years old, and like my dad. I wouldn't say he liked heavier stuff. Like the Who was playing regularly. Jethro Tull. He gave me his copy of Black Sabbath, Master Reality. So I had a little bit of influence, but in general, it was kind of a music influence.
Did you have the Kiss phonograph?
No, I didn't. Oh, I know exactly what you're talking about, but no, I didn't. Oh, that was awesome. I had a Kiss lunchbox though in the thermos. Yeah, had that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Kiss was your first introduction. You had a dad that influenced you a lot on the music you listened to. Where did it go from there after Kiss, 1976? How did you evolve into music in more rock music?
Good question, because, I mean, think about it. 70s, right? I didn't pull up in Google bands like Kiss. That wasn't like a thing. I think, don't get me wrong, like, so in there also, my influences were from when we would see REO Speedwagon. We saw them, at the Checker Dome and Poplar Creek and, some places around the Midwest that, like, aren't even open anymore. The Babies opened for them. I feel like Styx was kind of always around. My influence was from that. And then, REO Speedwagon was in there too. And then we'd go to the music store, and like, I know it sounds crazy, but I was 7 or 8 years old, and the guy in Co-op Records would say, oh, if she likes, these guys, like, you think she'd want to hear like Journey or whatever. Is kind of how that was. Like, I don't have a solid memory of where that went, but I was always a solo. I flew solo. My friends did not like or were, not exposed to the same things that I was. But when I was at my girlfriend's house and they would play, Kenny Rogers or like the Grease soundtrack, I'm like, this just doesn't fit to me. It was like a little bit of a mismatch with my soul. That's for sure.
I get that. I totally get that. Because, my first exposure that I've talked about before was Journey and Judas Priest and Van Halen and Kiss. There was not a lot of kids my age listening to what I was listening to, 6, 7, 8 years old. My music history really is because of my brother. My brother would bring home a record. He was 4 years older than me. I would listen to it and I would like it and I wanted more. So I had to rely on him to really navigate me through that rock and roll journey until I was old enough to start buying my own cassettes or albums, and then figuring out the radio station, which was WMET back in the day that I talked about in the first episode, and then there was WVVX later on that only came out at night. So you really had to search and find to listen to hard rock and heavy metal in the early 80s.
You got VVX lucky, because I was in central Illinois, so I didn't find out about that until I went to college.
Yeah, I tell the story. I was so engrossed in the music. It was hard for me to think of anything else. I played Little League Baseball and I played other Little League sports, and I loved doing that. But my passion was always the music, and putting that stereo on the other side of the bed with the headphones on at night, listening till 1 o'clock in the morning in 5th and 6th grade, and going to Catholic school and trying to get through religion class or English class when I'm dead tired. And then all of a sudden, coming, after dinner, getting this burst of energy to sit in my room and just listen to the music. My friends were listening to Duran Duran. They were listening to Men at Work. They were listening to all that pop stuff back in the day. So they were just not where I was at in terms of music. It wasn't until MTV started to become more popular and the US Festival happened in 83. The band that really brought other kids my age to like that music was Motley Crue. It was a Home Sweet Home video on the Request Hour on MTV, which I think was like 4 to 5 or 5 to 6. It was right before dinner.
Oh, yeah. 4 to 5, I think. I remember that. Yep.
Yeah, and Home Sweet Home was the #1 requested video for like months, like every day. So if you weren't a Motley Crue fan when that run started, you were by the time that run ended.
Oh,
by the time they had to
11.
retire.
I remember that. And I think it was 11 times in a row that they won. Maybe more. It might have been more.
It was like 3 months. It was a long time because it started to become between my brother and I, do you think Motley Crue is still going to be #1? And they always were on that request line. And what that did is it started to expose other bands during that time. So you got the exposure for Rat, who was popular because of Round and Round. But they had the video for Lay It Down and You're in Love. Black and Blue had a song that was on that request line. There were other bands too, Y&T with Summertime Girls. It was kind of bringing all those bands with Motley Crue. It was kind of the train. I mean, of course, you had the Twisted Sisters and the Def Leppards and, like I just said, the Rats. Bon Jovi really didn't break yet. It wasn't until like 86 with Slippery When Wet that they really broke on MTV.
But Motley Crue 100% paved the way for that.
Absolutely.
And the funny thing was, so Y&T, it took a party song. It took Summertime Girls to get them exposure. Mm-hmm. That was their third, maybe more than, they'd been together for a while.
I think it's like their 5th record.
Yeah. They've been together for a while. And Rat, they were huge and had way heavier stuff. What is it? I don't know, Way Cool Jr. or something. Actually, I didn't really care for that song.
Yeah, that was later on. Right.
It was later on, but I think it was written and recorded 5 or 6 years earlier or something like that.
It was.
And Rat, I mean, they were right up there with, I loved Robin Crosby and still Warren DeMartini.
Great guitar player.
Big time. And they were always underrated, but yeah, I had to kind of throw that in there. But I mean, I think so. It sounds like your brother was a big influence on you between Kiss Alive, the story I said about Destroyer and stuff like that. It was probably 4 or 5 years. I remember 6th or 7th grade, 7th grade, when I heard Too Fast for Love. I was very fortunate. I had a buddy who was like, yeah, you like music. Again, Flying Solo. So if anybody, it was mostly guys, usually would be like, oh, you like music, why don't you listen to this? He had just moved from California and was like, there's this huge band. They're everywhere. Everyone loves them. You're going to love them, I think, based on your taste. So, and it was Motley Crue, Too Fast for Love.
Well, that's what brings us to our topic for today's episode, which is the Motley Crue Dirt movie. I don't want to say we're going to review it, but we're definitely going to discuss it, what it meant to us to finally see it on a screen, although a small screen, and what it was like growing up during that time when all these things were happening. So let's begin with the Motley Crue Dirt discussion. So you and I had talked about this prior to it coming out, and we were both excited. We were looking forward to it. It was years in the making. I remember when the headlines first came out, probably about a decade ago.
Yeah.
That the rights to the movie had been sold, or the rights to the book had been sold to be made into a movie. And it had gone through different production companies or different studios, and it finally landed on Netflix doorstep. Mm-hmm. And they decided to move forward. I know it was kind of hooked in with MTV for a while, MTV Films. I think there were other couple studios. Was it Warner Brothers or 20th Century Fox, Paramount maybe?
I think it was Paramount that picked it up, and the parameters, as they kind of got down to it, the parameters were not acceptable to Nikki Sixx, at least according to what he said when he decided to go with Netflix.
And that's really interesting because Nikki Sixx has been the driver of this movie since the book came out. And I give him credit for waiting to find the right studio to make this, because you can't tell this story in any other way like the book did. I know there's some differences in how things happen, and we'll talk about those, but they didn't take away from the essence of the book, and it didn't take away from their story.
Well, the essence of Motley Crue.
Absolutely.
Nicky's always said, true to ourselves. Fuck everybody else. We're doing what we want to do. He had to. I'm glad he waited to have the movie made under those parameters, because that wouldn't have been true to him or the crew. What they stand for.
And I also like the fact that it wasn't like the Queen movie. I love the Queen movie. It is great. It is awesome.
Yep.
The Queen movie is made how you would think a Queen movie would be, right? It's very polished. It's very...
Yeah, for the audience.
It's yes, absolutely. The Motley
and for
Crue,
the critics.
Right, and for the critics.
Yeah.
The Motley Crue movie is made the way a Motley Crue movie should be.
For the fans.
For the fans, and it's not the critics. And when this movie came out, you would read the reviews of whatever douchebag elitist that was discussing this movie, and it was just the wrong person to be talking about this. Someone who doesn't remember any of it, who has an elitist view of music.
Sounded like an outsider to me.
Sounded like a complete outsider.
Yeah.
But when you look at the popularity on the Netflix reviews and how many fans loved it, that's your story right there.
It was Rotten Tomatoes, like 99% for the fan approval, and then the critic approval was 50%.
Right.
Nikki was like, that did exactly what it was supposed to do.
Absolutely, because that's what the essence of Crue has always been. Like you just said, is fuck the critics. We're going to do it our way, and they did it. Are there some issues I have with the movie? Yeah, and I guess no movie is going to be perfect. My issues with the movie, and we've talked about it. Let's get the issues out of the way, because then we'll talk about the good stuff. The issues I have are that, A, it's not long enough.
Oh, yeah.
Because I think there's so much more that they could have told and gone really, and dived really into that story.
So do you feel like it was abbreviated? Because I do.
I do, and I felt like I was in a marathon. It starts off laying the groundwork for the story. Nikki Sixx, with his childhood and being on the scene in L.A., meeting Tommy Lee at the diner. I don't know if that's all true or not, but that's the way it was depicted in the story. And then it just felt like a sprint. It felt like boom, 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 boom.
And it was a splash of everything, too.
Right,
They didn't really dive into any... Right. Even the characters weren't totally developed the way that we all know them, if you're a fan.
Yes, yes, I totally agree. Because when I got done watching the movie, I watched it by myself because I didn't want to be distracted. I didn't want to be annoyed by someone going, did that really happen? Or, I'll do that later with people. But I just felt, like you said, it felt like a splash of things. And every moment in the movie was happening. Every time I realized, oh yeah, I remember this. I remember this when this happened. Like I remember the Circus magazine with Vince Neil's mugshot on it. Remember the cover of that?
Yeah.
I do remember that. And I remember because my family, my aunts and uncles and cousin lived close to Redondo. They lived in Palos Verdes.
Really?
And that was big news. That was when that was huge. They were an up and coming band. They did not reach their pinnacle yet of their success. They were a huge MTV band at the time. They were a huge rock band. It was after a U.S. festival. It was after all these things.
And controversial.
And very controversial. I remember Shout at the Devil. I remember watching things on TV on like 20/20 or 60 Minutes of these ministers burning the record, completely not understanding what the song was about.
Just break down the phrase. I know we're not talking about this, but shout at the devil.
Right,
Come on, guys.
Right.
Yeah.
And then there was the poster. That was the Shout at the Devil poster, which my mother forced me to take down. which had the pentagram on it.
Oh, yeah.
And I remember hanging that up and right above my bed. And I remember going, wow, that is the coolest thing that I own. I was 9 years old. And my mother dropped me and my friends off at the mall. And there was a store in the mall that sold posters and music memorabilia.
Oh, yeah. Ours was called Coach House, yeah.
Yeah. I forget. I think it was called like Potpourri or something like that. It was a really odd name. I remember flipping through the posters, and in between the Heather Thomas bikini posters and
the pink bikini,
the pink bikini and all this stuff, there was this Motley Crue poster which had like a red border on the top and the bottom, and it had the 4 pictures of
exactly what you're talking about. I totally remember that. Yep.
It had the 4 pictures of all the members, and they had the pentagram like I think at the top, and then Motley Crue was at the top, and then Shout the Devil was at the bottom.
Yep.
And I'm like, that is so awesome. And I bought it, hung it up, and I remember admiring my work. I taped it I made it nice and even as best as I could, and I had the door shut, and I just laid on my bed being proud of myself that I hung a poster on my wall. And the poster was Motley Crue, even before I had a Kiss poster, which was the next one. And I remember my mother knocking on the door to let me know dinner was ready, and she opened the door, and she's like, yeah, dinner's ready. What the hell is that on your wall? I go, that's Motley Crue. You need to take that down.
Okay, but what was it? Was it the imagery? Was it the way they looked?
It was the pentagram.
A pentagram. Okay.
And they were devil below.
Strictly. Okay, well, yeah.
For a 9-year-old going to Catholic school, that was a big no-no.
And what you just said, so that's exactly back then, as we found out, that's what Nikki Sixx wanted to happen. Right.
So I ended up taking the poster off the wall above my bed, and I put it on the back of the door. So my mother could never see it. When she opened the door, and that's why I always close my door at 9 years old.
How'd that work? Did it work?
It worked. It worked for about a good, 5-6 months. And then by that time, I think she just lost the motivation to care when she saw it. Because I think she admired the fact that I was pretty resourceful and figured it out that if I put it here, she could never see it.
Yeah.
So out of sight, out of mind. I remember the imagery being very important for Motley Crue. Getting back to some of the issues. So I didn't think it was long enough. Didn't think they really dived into the stories that were happening, the moments that were happening in their history, and the members of the band. Because we talked about this a couple months ago after it first came out. There's so much going on with all 4 of those guys. Every member has a story. Every member has tragedy in their life. Mm-hmm. Nikki Sixx, we all know that. He's been very forthcoming about things. Tommy Lee, who's been a subject of tabloids for years. We all know that.
Yep.
Mick Mars with his disease.
Yep.
And, of course, Vince Neil with the accident, with the death of his daughter. So there's so much, I hate to use the word pain with those guys. I don't know if that's the right word, but there's so many things that have happened to them that to just kind of gloss over them or not give them the proper moments that it needed, I thought it lost something because of that.
Yep.
And that's why I think it should have been a miniseries. Netflix should have done like 5 2-hour episodes each week for like 5 or 6 weeks.
Or 5 or 6 years. I mean, if true hardcore fans, like I could just watch them forever, just dive into each one of them. Mm-hmm. I mean, those things they definitely, again, that felt like a flash in the pan because they did review or feature everything that you just mentioned, but it was very quick. Mick mentions once in the beginning. Yeah, so long before I met them, diagnosed with ankylosing spondylitis.
Which I did not know. I forgot that in the book. I didn't know that he was diagnosed with that prior to joining the band. I thought that was something that happened as they became successful after they broke up the first time, after Vince Neil left and then after Tommy Lee left. I thought that happened after all that stuff went on.
I think he said he was 9. If he didn't say it in the movie, he said in the book that he was 19. Mm-hmm. And then in the book, he talks about he had a rough upbringing. He's from Indiana, Crown Point, maybe, or something.
Something like that.
And he talked about sleeping on the floor. I think he had to sleep on the floor.
Well, he was homeless, right?
he was homeless for a while, but even when he was and had a home, quote home, I don't think he had the best relationship with his parents, and he was sleeping on the dirt floor of their shed at one point. I don't know if he said, like, I always wonder, I know he made a comment about it, like, I wondered if my disease came from that, or I wonder if it went back that far, or something like that, so.
Okay. Yeah, that was interesting. And Mick is such an interesting guy. He's a quiet guy, doesn't do a lot of press, doesn't do a lot of interviews. He's a very underrated guitar player. A guitar player that I have learned to appreciate as I've listened to more of his music and listened to other guitar players. Tone is very important to Mick.
Yep.
And I think that's a huge part of his style. There's no one that sounds like him. And that really is the essence of a great guitar player. If you have recognizable sound, the moment somebody hears a lick or a chord you play, that's what you want. And I think he's definitely
unmistakable Mick Mars. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
There's a super recent interview with him. I think I ran across it on YouTube the other day. It was like Ernie Ball has like a show or something. So he was saying, I've gotten to the point where, and this was always my goal, like it sounds like there's two guitars. Mm-hmm. It's right on. Yeah, Mick is very special. I think the coolest thing to me was he's always kind of like the quiet, understated guy, just sits back and, those guys are going to get in trouble. And then he's got like the quick zingers in the dirt. It's depicted like he's like, hippie's not going to make it. Nicky's like, tell him.
Yeah, there was that article that came out a month or two ago with Jakey Lee stating that. Oh. Which, number one, okay, why wait all these years to say that?
It appears to be sour grapes. I mean,
sure, because he was part of Rough Cut back in the day. He was also part of the original Rat.
Yep.
Of course, he ended up in Ozzy.
Yep.
But he was only
Badlands for a minute,
which was
or
a
two
great
after
band.
that.
Badlands is a phenomenal band.
Them too. Yep.
And I always liked his work in Ozzy. He wasn't in Ozzy for a long time. I know there's some issues with Sharon and Jake over songwriting credits and whatnot. But sour grapes or trying to remain relevant, I just didn't see the purpose.
So what did he say? So we can tell everybody what the conversation was.
He basically was in an interview. I don't know if it was, I think it was on YouTube or something like that, or on a podcast. And he mentioned that Motley Crue wanted him to replace Mick after I don't know if it was the Theater of Pain album or if it was even earlier than that. Around then, yeah.
Maybe it's between Shout at the Devil and Theater, I think, yeah.
Right. So my thoughts on that were a couple things. Let's for argument's sake, let's say a conversation like that did happen, okay? Now you also have to put into context the condition of Motley Crue probably when they had that conversation. Was it just an off-the-cuff remark, a joke? More than likely it probably was, if it happened at all.
Yeah.
It was not probably something that was serious. If they were serious with that, knowing Nicky and knowing the strong personalities of that band, there's no doubt that if they really wanted that, they would have pushed forward and made that happen.
Oh, absolutely. I think during that time frame, you can't take anything seriously that
Right.
could have come from that.
Right.
They were, Doc McGee was like, I can't believe, we're even thinking of sending them to Europe on another tour.
Sure.
Somebody's going to come back in a body bag. I think, well, I mean, we know that kind of happened with Nicky,
Right. So I was a little disappointed in that because I just felt that the timing of it just seemed odd. And this has never come up at all. Yeah. He's done so many interviews, especially since he's come back to public life. He was very underground for a while, Jakey Lee. And then to all of a sudden say this when the movie's out, not when the book came out, not when they knew the movie was being made. I just felt that it was
interesting timing at
probably,
minimum. Yeah. Too bad.
I smell a lot of bullshit on that,
Yeah. Well, even Sebastian Bach, when he said, well, at one point they asked me to, replace Vince Neil. Like, what? Like, okay, that was 2 years ago, right? Didn't he make that comment like 2 years ago?
2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah.
But didn't Nikki Sixx also say in an interview that they were playing with a lot of different people?
Kind of. He didn't come out and he didn't deny it and he didn't confirm it.
Right.
He kind of like told a gray story around it, so something like that could have happened. Yeah.
Right. And maybe they jammed with them and whatnot and nothing came of it. Mm-hmm. I don't know. You have to remember Nikki especially was in a different state of mind back then.
Yeah. Yeah.
All those guys were. They were dealing with the turmoil of a new lead singer. or replacing Vince Neil.
How about the comment in The Dirt when Tommy says, we can replace him. Van Halen did that. They replaced their lead singer. And Nicky's like, you say that every single time he's late for rehearsal.
Yeah, that was...
Interesting detail to put in, I thought.
Right. And I think a lot of bands who did end up replacing the larger than life character or larger than life person in the band looked at Van Halen as kind of the example, because they kind of set the bar. They didn't miss a beat. This episode's not about Van Halen, but when you do compare David Lee Roth leaving, who was the face of rock music at that time, 1984, the biggest rock album to date in that decade. The only reason why it wasn't number one was because of Michael Jackson's Thriller. He was ginormous, and no one's bigger than the band. But if there was ever a case where that may have happened, it was that moment right there, because people really recognized what David Lee Roth. They saw David Lee Roth on television, instantly thought of Van Halen. So when bands were replacing their lead singers or their guitar players, I'm sure they did look at Van Halen as, well, look at them. They replaced them with Sammy Hagar, and then they had a number one record with 5150.
Okay, number one record is one thing. I love Sammy Hagar. I loved Montrose. I do love David Lee Roth. Unchained is not Dreams. That's what Dreams are made of, whatever that song is. They're two different bands.
Right.
I unsubscribed at that point. And even though The Dirt didn't really address it too much, when Motley Crue came out, I remember with John Corabi, I'm like, I've got to hear this. Can't wait. Left my office. It was like my first job out of college. Like I remember it was 3:30. They were going to play whatever the new release was. I think in about 5 seconds, I was like, that's it. I'm done. I didn't listen to the rest of the song. Went back in my office and I was like, that's too bad. Not going to buy that record. Not supporting these guys anymore. I officially turned my back on them. I don't, the Crue fan community feels lots of controversy about this, a lot of different opinions. I'm one who, you guys, they say it themselves. I'm like, you guys, the four of you together make what is so awesome about Motley Crue.
Sure.
It's not because Vince's vocals are so amazing, not because Nicky's such an awesome bass player. He's the first to say that. I do think Tommy Lee's an amazing talent. I love him. Mars, we talked about, one of a kind, just amazing.
Right.
But the four of them together is what makes them Motley Crue. So after The Dirt came out, talking with a couple of my friends, and somebody said, look what Nikki Sixx has turned into. And I was like, no, I don't know many 60-year-old guys who still look good as Nikki does. What I loved about him, and it was probably back to 1976 when I saw Kiss, Nikki snarled and spit and whatever, and I'm like, he's badass. Like I love them because of that.
Right.
So
well, they always talk about being a gang.
Yeah,
and they really depict that well in the movie. It was a band of brothers.
Yeah.
It was they came up and they lived it. They lived the dirt. They got dirty, so to speak. They lived in these rundown apartment infested with cockroaches and had all these parties and garbage piled up and the door broken down, and it was the essence. That's the engine right there of Crue. That's the attitude that propelled them into this stratosphere of mega huge rock stars, right?
Right.
And I love the we talked about Van Halen. One last thing, the connection with David Lee Roth that's in the book, and has a quick scene in the movie.
What's everybody looking at?
Yeah. Well, I forget what the nickname, Tommy talks about it, I believe. He talks about David Lee Roth coming to the parties before they made it. And they gave him a nickname because his drug use that he was on, the cocaine, he never would spill the cocaine in this sea of people.
That's right. I do too. I
can't remember the name.
I do remember that.
Yeah.
That story though. Yeah.
So I remember that story, and it was kind of cool how they put him in the movie, the character David Lee Roth in the movie. But getting back to the story of The Dirt, the four guys, we talked about Mick, Vince Neil, one of the biggest tragedies at that time was the car accident with Razzle from Hanoi Rocks, and how that impacted Motley Crue fans and how it impacted their moment. It was a very sad thing that happened. I remember I wasn't really familiar with Hanoi Rocks until that happened. I remember reading the article in Circus Magazine or Hit Parader and reading. I'm like, oh, I never heard. I'm like, Canaway Rocks. It's this Finnish band. Checked them out. I liked them, but they were They had just started to tour America.
They were just coming to their own. Totally.
Right.
Yeah.
And it was a tragedy. And like I said, I still remember that Circus magazine with the cover. It was either Circus or Hip Parade, but I think it was Circus. And they had the mugshot with Vince Neil. And I remember thinking to myself, oh man, he's going to jail. Motley Crue's done.
Yeah.
There's just no way.
That's what happened to people when they would get DUIs, and certainly if somebody lost their life because of it back then.
Right.
Yeah.
If that happened today, there's no way he would have only served, a month?
Yeah, it was you know what? It was actually, he was sentenced to 30 days, and I think he served 13 days.
Yeah, that doesn't happen today.
And could be on a separate topic, but he had, there were a guard. He made friends with a guard or two in jail, and he had fans visiting him. Side note, but
money can buy happiness in certain moments.
I guess so. Yeah, and that's the thing is like the dirt. Like how do you choose to live with the money that comes your way that you don't expect, and like. These guys, I think, just got kind of swept up in that. Like,
it's very easy to do that, especially people that age at that time. Vince Neil's life, though, is really the subject in that movie that I really don't think it does enough for, because there is a lot of tragedy and there is a lot of sadness that's happened since that moment, or since he's been part of Motley Crue.
Yeah.
You look at obviously the car accident. You look at the death of his daughter. You look at the troubled relationships that he's had over the years for the past few decades. That's a man that's got a lot inside of him. Mm-hmm. And a lot of things maybe he hasn't forgiven himself. He even talks in Behind the Music where, he basically bought himself out of jail. And
he said, I was the OJ of current times.
Right.
Or I was the OJ back then.
Right.
Yeah.
And you can detect a little bit of sorrow in that, when he says that, because I think he knows he should have done more time.
Yeah, there's a lot of remorse.
A lot of remorse.
They don't forget, though, in the dirt, they skipped 20 years. They did show, this is how they ended up on the end tour, but there was 20 years in between there. They stopped really at the late, mid-90s, really,
right,
when the Karabi stuff was. So they skipped 20 years. Again, why we needed a lot more.
Right, there's so much. We haven't even talked about Tommy and Nikki yet.
Right.
But just finishing up with Vince, he's a very complex guy. When you think of Vince Neil, the casual observer may just think, oh, he's the singer of Motley Crue. He's a buffoon or whatever. There's a lot there. And his story really is something that I would just love to see and love to be talked about, because I think there has to be a moment of understanding when it comes to Vince Neil that, yes, a lot of his tragedies were self-inflicted. Obviously not his daughter, which is a moment in the movie with that's just very tragic.
That's when I watched it. After that, I fast forward through it. I can't.
Yeah,
even,
that's a very tough thing, especially how he's talked about it in interviews in the past, and how painful that was. He still has that foundation.
Yep, in the golf tournament every year.
Yeah. Right. So that's a subject that definitely warranted more time to talk about and to show. And that's, again, why we need a miniseries. They could just do one episode of that miniseries on the breakup. The back and forth with I was fired, no, you quit, all that stuff.
And get everybody's perspective on that.
Everyone's,
right?
Because they kind of do talk about that in the dirt, the different perspective. And that's what the unique way it was presented, the unique presentation of that book. I had never read anything like how that was written until I read that book. Mm-hmm. The way it had each member telling
each of their perspectives,
and you had other people
even
telling.
In the book, they say he's like, "No, I was fired," and they're like, "He quit."
Yes, yeah. And I think that's why I read it, and it took me like a day and a half to read that because I couldn't put it down.
Yeah.
So Vince needed more time. Mick needed more time. Tommy, of course, he's probably at that time during the height of their popularity, he was the face of Motley Crue. He was the name that everybody knew, largely because of the marriage to Heather Locklear.
Right. I mean, she was a primetime A+ celebrity at the time, right?
Right.
Like
She was Dynasty, T.J. Hooker. She was on.
She revived like Aaron Spelling's series or whatever.
Was it Melrose Place?
Yeah. And then before that, she was on Dynasty. But yeah, she supposedly brought back Melrose Place from heading toward being canceled and stuff like that.
Right,
So,
right.
yeah.
Now, was she still married to Tommy when that happened, or was that after? I don't remember.
When what happened?
Melrose Place?
What years were those? No, she wasn't, because that was like mid-90s, right?
I think so.
Mid to late 90s, I think, was Melrose Place. Yeah.
But he was the face largely because of the tabloids, because of Heather Locklear. You know, Tommy is, from what I see, I don't know him personally, obviously, but he is the good time Tommy. He is the big heart.
What did Doc McGee say? Low IQ, high RPMs.
And I guess that's the perfect way to describe him. But again, he's had a lot of pain in his life. You know, you look at him going to jail with when he was married to Pam Anderson, or going through the divorce.
A lot of drama with that relationship.
A lot of drama.
It seemed like.
And that's something I kind of want to touch on too. I know there was a big thing about 4 months ago with the interview that Pamela Anderson did and talked about her time with Tommy Lee. And there was a big pushback against Tommy Lee. And I was really upset about that, because we're in the midst of the Me Too movement. I get it. I get that there are bad men out there who use their power for disgusting things in disgusting ways. Those people should be exposed. But Tommy did his time. Tommy went to jail.
Yep.
Tommy has not been in trouble since then, right? He has not gone to jail. He hasn't had any issues. I'm sure he has, but nothing that's been...
You're talking about the domestic violence stuff, right?
Yes.
So when I was on Nikki Sixx's blog back in, like in the beginning of blogs, so this was 99, 2000, there was maybe 100 people on there. So it was like a chat room. It was essentially like Nikki's chat room. And so Donna used to contribute, Donna D'Erico, because they were married at the time. Nikki and Donna were. They were super. Now, I know for sure Donna and Pam are friends. I see them like communicating on social media and stuff like that. But her pipe-ins were, we went to court with Tommy. We backed him. We've been there when Pam has contributed also. She's been, this isn't me gossiping. This was firsthand. Like I was reading it, right? And she was writing it. And it was important to them, being regular kind of up close and personal friends with Tommy and Pam, that everyone knew that Pam totally contributed. So she needs to give him a break. Like, it seems circumstantial. He's had issues and stuff with didn't you do something with the photographer?
But that was during that period too, right?
It was Pam. So Vince Neil says on, what was it on? It might have been their MTV
documentary, Behind the Music.
Thank you, Behind the Music. Vince said, hey, if you're going to be with a high profile celebrity, get ready. It's coming. She was, Baywatch was huge. She was the first of kind of the bombshells. She created the look of she recreated the look of platinum hair, big, huge boobs, fake boobs. She made all that stuff kind of popular again.
Yes.
So she was just like this sex symbol. And sure, fun-loving Tommy, it all seemed fun and games. But dude, photographers are going to follow you everywhere, every step you make. So maybe he wasn't totally, prepared for all that. And I'm not defending.
No, obviously, domestic violence is a horrible thing.
Yeah.
But we also tend to judge a person at their worst moment than at their best.
Right.
And that was probably one of Tommy's worst moments. But like I said, he's largely been out of trouble since then.
Yep.
Nothing like that.
That's right.
I don't remember any other domestic charges coming against him. And I even believe the judge in his case made mention to the issues with him being married to Pam and how all these issues are coming up since he's been in this relationship.
He said these things seem to follow you in this relationship or something.
Yes, I do remember that.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. And the other thing is why go on TV and start talking about this when this happened 20 some years ago?
She might be trying to get attention.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And again, he paid his dues. He did time. He went to jail for it.
Leave him alone. Yeah.
Why all of a sudden bring this up? There's no reason to do that. Like I said, it's something that is part of the Motley Crue legacy, more Tommy's legacy.
Yeah.
But I just don't think it is necessary. There was no point in bringing it up. There's a great story, if you're familiar with Butch Walker, who's one of my favorite artists. He produced Tommy's solo record, Tommyland. And there's a great story about him hanging out with Tommy Lee. It involves Tommy Lee, a helicopter, and Slash's house. So if you ever get a chance to read Butch Walker's book, Drinking with Strangers,
Okay.
it's a quick read, just like The Dirt is. It's a great story. It's very entertaining.
I'll have to check that out.
Yeah. But again, more depth to Tommy's character. Tommy comes off, or people to think of Tommy as this brainless, high energy guy. And again, he's not. He's a very real, honest guy. And he wears his emotions on his sleeves. You can always see his Twitter posts and his Instagram posts, where he reacts to something.
He doesn't hold back.
He does not hold back.
But the way his family life was depicted, and I'm a huge fan of his sister, Athena. She's the greatest. I think she's awesome. And so you can kind of see, and the stuff that she talks about their family and stuff like that too, you can see that his parents were together forever. So they had this like home life that was like a real home life.
Mm-hmm.
The family was together. They all lived together, not broken apart, any of that kind of stuff. So I think it's like from a genuine place.
Yes.
It seems like.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then last, there's Nikki Sixx, who is now the face of Motley Crue. In the 80s and
CEO of Motley Crue.
right,
Yeah.
it is now Nikki. But now, back in the day when you thought of Motley Crue, you immediately thought of Tommy Lee. Now you immediately think of Nikki Sixx.
It's odd, dude, because I had no idea. Like CEO of Motley Crue and all the story behind On With the Show. Frankie, I thought he was writing about some friend or some
I did not know that
fictitious person.
I did not know that
Yeah.
to the movie either. When they,
I didn't know he was the mastermind behind Motley Crue. I knew none of these things.
Right.
I knew these just raw looking dudes who like looked different, sounded different, were super raw. Just like that's all I knew. I didn't know that this was all him.
well, I remember watching interviews with Doc McGee over the years, and him mentioning how important Nikki's vision was to the success of Motley Crue. So I always thought that it was kind of out there on the kind of the edges of the Motley Crue story. But as this movie has gone into production and then it was released and the book was written and released, it became more of without Nikki Sixx, Motley Crue does not become what they have become.
Yeah. Who knew, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And he also wrote a lot of the lyrics. I think all the lyrics he wrote.
I think finally by like maybe girls, a few of them they all got credit on a couple of songs.
Right.
But,
for the lyrics, I know the music, Mick wrote a lot, and I know Nikki wrote a lot with Mick on the music, but lyrically,
I want to say like all four of them had their name on the lyrics for Home Sweet Home.
okay.
Maybe
okay.
I'm misquoting that.
And we're
but-
smart to do that because they all probably made a nice chunk of change with that.
Exactly.
But Nikki, as I've seen evolve, right? We talked about the attitude of Nikki and the spitting and the growling and his stage presence. I remember the Wild Side video where he's rolling down the stage.
Oh, yeah.
And then the Home Sweet Home video where he's spinning and he's got the guitar, he's whipping the guitar around. I always sense the anger inside of him.
Yeah.
There's a lot of pain with him. You talk about in the movie, or you see in the movie, the relationship with his mother, the non-existing relationship with his father. He even talks about it on Instagram and Twitter, how he's trying to heal from that whole process and get to a point where he can forgive his father.
Yeah.
And it's a work in progress, and he even admits that on posts and in interviews. And there's a lot of depth there. There's a lot going on with Nikki, just like there is with everybody. But one of the things that I like about where Nikki is now, he seems to finally be comfortable in his own skin.
Well, he's also been sober for 18 years. I want to say last week or sometime this week maybe it was 18 years for him. So I think he started emotionally processing things just 18 years ago in his 60 years on the earth, right?
Right.
So, and he said, like you said, I never could get a connection with my mom. Even she died, and I still didn't get that.
And an unresolved issue like that can be very painful.
Yeah.
Your mother is supposed to be your protector. She's supposed to nurture you. It's supposed to...
One person, unconditional, all that kind of stuff. Right.
And to have that unresolved and to have her pass on like that without resolving that issue, all the issues he had with her, that's got to be tough to overcome. I credit him because he's very honest. He talks about a lot. He talks a lot about mental illness. He talks a lot about depression on his posts. He seems to be a guy who finally comfortable with himself. He's got a wonderful family. Looks like to be wonderful kids. I'm sure like
being a dad, he's always talked about being a dad's really important to him.
And I'm sure like every family, they have issues. I mean, Tommy Lee had the issue with his son. And I know there was a lot of social media opinions on it, like, oh, you know, this. But quite honestly, if you really have studied the structure of a family with a father and a son, that is normal, where the son challenges the father. It's like being the king of the jungle, right? It is. The lion's the king of the jungle. Usually what happens is one of the sons of that lion will challenge the king of the jungle at some point. And it's the same thing. I forget what they call it, but therapists will tell you, family therapists will tell you that is a normal, that's not abnormal.
It's just a kid growing up. It's a boy growing up.
Well, yeah, and of course he's in his early 20s, Tommy's kid or whatever.
Yeah.
But that is more common than people think. The eldest son or one of the sons challenging the father, you know, exercising their independence, becoming an independent man. That is something that happens a lot.
Wasn't it Brandon sticking it for his mom too? It was his son sticking it for Pam.
But yes, that was the story told to the media.
Well, who knows, right?
Whether that's true or not, we don't know, and I don't want to.
Although he did post a bunch of stuff,
right?
Like on Instagram, it kind of did look like that,
right? And of course,
Pam
was posting some stuff too. But I don't want to speculate what the reasons were. The fact is that it happened. It's unfortunate. A lot of families have dealt with that, and it is a moment in any family that has dealt with that, where there's been a physical altercation between a son and a father, or a mother and daughter, or whoever it is. It's a difficult thing to get through. With that being said, it sounds like they resolved it. Hopefully they...
Well, what you haven't mentioned, though, is substance abuse is still in here somewhere.
Yeah. And to what extent, we don't know.
Nikki at one point mentions, I don't know if it's in the dirt, but at some point he's said, we spent our time where we didn't see eye to eye. Tommy didn't understand my commitment to sobriety. And I think they say that in the final tour documentary where they're talking, the speaking parts. I think they say it there.
And there was also, I don't want to call it a Twitter war because I don't think it was that, but there were also some comments back and forth after the final show where Nikki left and Tommy stayed around, did what Tommy does, have a good time.
Yep. And he said, I can't believe Nikki went home. And Nikki says, I was home in 20 minutes.
Right.
Believe me, though, I felt it. We were at the final show. I was hoping for a lot more energy and a lot more. Like, Vince Neil cried and teared up more than once, got emotional. I didn't really see it with the rest of the guys. So
I think being in a relationship where there's 4 different personalities, 4 strong personalities, it's hard to... It can be exhausting having 4 alpha males, because they all seem to be that way, dealing with each other in a toxic environment that involves drugs and booze and a lot of pain between all 4 of them.
That pain between all 4 of them, that leads to they each want it in different ways and to different extents the whole time throughout the whole Motley Crue career. Right. So like when I think back to the dirt, and I don't remember the details from the book about them walking up to that party and seeing Vince singing a Billy Squier cover.
Right.
I don't remember if that, in fact, I don't think that was exactly how it happened, but that's how it was depicted in the movie. Right. So at that point, they're just like, we just want to put this band together. And then here we are, like 40 years goes by, and like it's like they've forgotten it. It's just so sad because from the outside, I'm just like, they changed my life for sure. I identified with them for like the reasons that I said before. It spoke to me, and it was this is my soul. This is my all the pain and stuff that he was talking about in his songs. I'm like, I'm not sure where that comes from, but everybody's got something like this because I was like 12.
But there was when you have heavy drug use and you have a lot of alcohol and there's a lot of partying and there's a moment where real reality becomes very distant because you live in your own bubble and you have a different sense of things. Each guy in that band probably has a different perspective on what happens, hence how the book was written.
Yep.
When each individual has their own individual pain, as all 4 members have, and then there's the pain that they have as they're intertwined with each other. Vince mentions that no one ever apologized to him. They show the scene in the movie where Nikki doesn't tell him it's heroin, and he snorts heroin. They talk about, how Vince, says that no one ever apologized to him for not being there for when the car accident happened, when his daughter died. So I know Vince has a lot of resentment. In fact, I know someone that was
like, those guys were drinking, doing drugs right in front of me when I was trying to be sober. Yeah.
So there's a lot of, and I know when Tommy left after, was it Generation Swine?
Yeah. Was it it was 99, 2000, right?
Yeah. They went through a couple different drummers. He said a lot of things in the press about the current state of Motley Crue. Nikki has gone back and forth with Vince and Tommy over the years. He seems to be in a better place with Tommy now. But I know someone that was at the premiere of that movie.
Mm-hmm. Really?
He sat right across from Mick Mars. Nikki and Tommy sat close to each other.
Okay.
Vince was on the other side.
He came late, too. I remember them posting photos, and he wasn't even in most of them.
Right. Yeah. And then Mick was just doing his own thing. There was very little interaction between all four of them other than the press photos that they showed at the premiere.
That's sad. I hate hearing that.
Right. So there is, but I do think that there's so many issues that I don't want to say it's impossible because nothing's impossible, but to pull all that out and kind of heal amongst themselves, I don't want to be like this healing guru on this podcast, but I've had people that had suffered mental illness in my family, and I know people who have suffered from drug abuse. So I have the perspective to try to be more understanding about what each individual goes through. Mm-hmm. Most relationships, when they're failing or when there's tension or when there's toxic relationships between two people or however many people, each person has an underlying issue that is deep down in their core. And I can, based on what we know from Motley Crue, again, not knowing them personally, but just based on what we've read and what we've seen over the years and being fans, and what all they've had to deal with individually, you can almost bet that there's that pain in there, okay? With the drug abuse and all that stuff.
The unresolved stuff, though.
Unresolved,
because look at Iron Maiden. Look, they've managed to tough it out. Look at Rush. You know what I mean? There's bands who they've been together for an equal amount of time.
Yes.
And didn't get ripped apart in the same way.
But I also think that, especially when we talk about Rush, their judgment wasn't clouded by heroin use. And their judgment.
That's kind of my point, I guess.
Yeah. So when
how much are you going to let this stuff get in the way? And they all have addiction issues,
Right.
Yeah.
So and then there's the pain of having to deal with each other. Starting out, young kids, except for Mick, and then becoming huge in this popularity. And
if they have addictions, they're functioning with each other. Their lack of coping skills, they're functioning like emotional 9 or 10-year-olds, right? Before they start using. That's a recipe for bad things.
Right.
Yeah.
And then when you're not prepared for that success, which no one ever is, no one's ever prepared for that amount of success. And then you factor in all the drugs, and we may have even talked about the people nipping at you for this favor and that favor and this favor and that favor. Can't even imagine.
Yeah.
Then you have an element that's not looking out for your best interest, like record companies. They're not looking out for the health of any of those guys in that band. They're looking out at, looking for the bottom, the dollar.
Totally.
The profit of the albums and the songs. They wanted them, like Doc McGee says in Behind the Music, they couldn't put them on the road. They one of these guys or all of them would come home in a body bag.
But think about the dirt. So Tom Zutaut came and said, what did he say? It's been 2 months. Why are they not back on the road yet? And he's like, are you kidding?
Right.
That's on you if you want to do that, because these guys are in no shape. Tommy's banging his head against a cymbal or whatever. And Nikki's nodding off. And then Mick's just sitting there with a bottle of Jack Daniels in his hand. And they're just like, what are you, and Vince had just gotten out of the jail.
Right. Yeah. So when you have all that success and you're surrounded by people that really don't give a shit about you, they give a shit about everything else, the money that's being made, the favors that they're getting out of them, the drugs, the women, all that. It's very hard to formulate real relationships when you're in that state. And all the other issues they have, it is amazing that they're all still in one piece. And
So what do you think that is? Do you think that's conglomeration of being famous, drug addiction and just addiction in general? Like, what do you think that all those things are kind of a symptom of?
Are you talking about them all making it in one piece, or while that all was going on?
Both of those, I guess.
Well, that's a symptom of a lot of things. I don't think it's a black and white thing. I don't think it's, a lot of people like to associate something and there's only one resolution for it, or there's only one reason. I think there's a multiple various reasons.
But don't you think other bands had that stuff too, like Maiden?
I don't remember Maiden being as living in excess like Motley Crue. I don't remember any band really living it. The only person that really compares to Motley Crue is Ozzy.
Yeah.
That's the only one that I really look at. I mean, obviously there was Jimi Hendrix and Jim Morrison, the guys from the '60s,
but who were famous on that same on the same level. Yeah.
But and then there was all the stories about Zeppelin and their excess but during
they held
that,
it together.
But they held for the most part.
But except for John Bonham.
Yeah, but and there's a lot of issues too, with Zeppelin and especially with Page's addiction as they moved forward with their albums and their career. I mean, if you look at the last couple of albums with Led Zeppelin, it was mostly John Paul Jones handling the arrangements, handling the sound. That's why there's more of a synthesizer base to, especially In Through the Outdoor. But during that time, when we talk about life in the 80s as a rock star, obviously Ozzy came from Black Sabbath. One of the reasons why he was no longer in Black Sabbath was because of his lifestyle and how he would just go off the grid on at times. There's a great story in that book, Van Halen Rising, about Ozzy Osbourne. I think it's in that book. Sleeping in the wrong hotel room, and they couldn't find him for the show. And I think Van Halen ended up doing a longer set because they were on tour with them. I think that's in the book. But again, I don't think it's a symptom of one thing. I think it's a symptom of, I think each individual has their own symptoms, and they mesh it all together. And
form them together and just kind of imploded.
And it kind of, I don't know if it imploded until, probably right before the Girls into Dr. Feelgood. I think it was simmering for a while.
Yeah.
And I don't think when you have all the excess that they lived in or lived through, it just wasn't healthy for any of those guys. But when you're making a lot of money and you live this glamorous life, or what appears to be a glamorous life, people don't take your inner pain serious. Now, you mentioned Iron Maiden. I don't think Iron Maiden really lived in excess like that. I mean, I'm sure being from the UK, they like a good pint of beer, and they drink. But I don't remember, and I'm sure they did do drugs because it was very prevalent in the 80s. But I don't remember any of those guys being in rehab for heroin or being taken off the road because they were endangering themselves.
Yeah, that we know of.
Right,
yeah.
right. So I don't.
But I think it was the addiction kind of feeding all this, I guess, is why.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And usually with bands, there's maybe one member, or maybe two members that are toxic. Mm-hmm. That, Stephen Pearcy of Rat talks about his addictions.
Yeah.
There's other bands. When you have all four, or maybe three out of the four, heavily into drugs, alcohol, women, living in this lifestyle, then you put the money in, then you put what could be determined as depression. I'm not trying to diagnose anybody. I'm not a doctor. I'm just, talking about what they've all had to go through. It doesn't usually end well. That's why I'm so, I love listening to Nikki Sixx talk in interviews. I love how he's
a great interviewer.
Yeah. And I just how he's come through the darkness, basically. He's made it through.
But it's because he got sober, though. That's
right.
That's the one thing that kind of made all this happen.
His addiction to heroin, which is a hard drug to kick, to do that, he is an inspiration to a lot of people.
Yeah.
I know there's people out there that have issues with him. I think people are always going to have issues with individuals based on just point of view and just what's going on. But I just think that him especially has really redefined himself. I don't think, when I think of Nikki Sixx now, I don't think people look at him as this hardcore drug, heroin-induced maniac. I think they look at him now as someone who has been an advocate for addiction, an advocate for mental health and mental illness. And I think it's important. And I think he's come through all that, and he's living a positive life, and he's a positive now influence on people that are dealing with similar things.
Yeah. I never thought when I read Heroin Diaries that it was going to end up being such a big influence on people struggling with addiction. Mm-hmm. Really had no idea. And I think I haven't even looked recently, but it was going to come out on Broadway or something, right?
I know he's working on that. I don't know what the status is. I know that's kind of like what his project is over the next foreseeable future.
Yeah.
I don't know how long that's going to take. I do know he has plans to make it like a Rent, where it showcases in different cities, and it also ties into drug awareness and addiction centers in that area. I think he has plans for doing that.
It's his way of giving back. And you know what? So do you think the depiction of everything that happened in the dirt really apologized to Vince? Oh, let's all come together. We're here for you, buddy. Let's get the band back together. All that kind of stuff. Do you think the way that all that was depicted, or maybe just the whole characterization of him, had anything to do with, because I think when I hear that he's going to do that with Heroin Diaries, it's just kind of a major mea culpa. It's like his way of kind of recognizing maybe the way he lived in the past and all that kind of stuff, and how can I give back?
Yeah, I think that's a possibility, and I can see him doing that. I do think that moment in the movie was a way to apologize to Vince. Mm-hmm. And according to Vince, it had never happened before. Mm-hmm. And I don't know how Vince took that himself, but that scene at the bar, which never happened, but obviously they want to depict it the way a Hollywood story is going to be depicted. They got to, close all the loose ends before the credits roll.
It's like the way he would have handled it now if he was sober then.
Yeah. I think so. I think there's something to it. He did have final okay on the script, so I think he was okay with it, and maybe that was put in there for that specific reason.
From the 4 members they did, but they didn't ask other people.
Yeah. So I think it was interesting the way that was depicted at the end.
Yeah.
I just think, and I will say this, that it's a great movie. It was fun to watch. The music is a huge role in the movie. It's almost like the 5th character as you go through their catalog throughout the whole movie.
Yep.
I just wish it would have been about 20 minutes longer, or
20 minutes? I wish it would have been.
If they would have done they're not going to have the 3-hour Godfather movie out of Motley Crue, but I do think that if they would have added another 20, 25 minutes to that story, they could have done a lot more for each character and for each situation. And I do think that Netflix should revisit, hey, this was so popular as a release, let's do a miniseries. Let's do 5.
Who knows? Nicky would have to be willing too, though. If he's already kind of moved on to other things.
Yeah, it's easy. I'm sure it's not easy. I shouldn't say that, but I'm sure this whole process of getting it from the book to the screen was a big eye opener for them and an exhausting effort. I mean, this was probably, when this movie finally came out, I'm sure there was a big sigh of relief that, wow, this is finally happening after all the BS that they had to deal with through years and years of different studios and all that crap that they had to probably overcome. Maybe they're not willing to take that on. Maybe they don't want to devote that much time to making sure it's done correctly.
They would have to get the 4 guys to come back and everything. I remembered seeing the first shot of them walking down the Sunset Strip, which I think is in New Orleans, is where they.
Yeah, and that's a great scene too. I know I have a few friends that are upset that it wasn't filmed in L.A. As long as it looks like L.A. I mean, how many movies are filmed in Canada that depict Chicago or depict New York or whatever?
Totally.
So I don't have an issue with it. I just that the foundation of the story, the first 5-10 minutes, are awesome because it kind of really sets the tone for the movie. It just feels like I needed a drink or a bottle of water at the end because I was kind of worn out because it just goes boom, boom, boom over,
It does. Yeah. It does. Which is why they were snippets though. It felt like they were just snippets, a little splash. I just wanted so much more from every single scene.
Anything else you want to add in closing about it that we didn't talk about?
I don't know. I think the one I just would like to say, definitely the one thing that stood out to me, I was surprised by Mars, like zingers, his one-liners.
Yeah.
I was just like, what an awesome dude. Hippie's not going to make it, so tell him, And then when they're kind of preparing their the choreography of "Take Me to the Top," what are we going to do on stage? And he's like, then we'll do some of this fucking shit. And that's where the guitar comes from, where they all in unison do that toward the crowd. I was like, that's where that came from. I was like so happy to see that.
Yeah.
So, and I assume that's real. Who knows? But I loved it. So.
Well, once again, this is the discussion on the Motley Crue movie, The Dirt. It's a great movie. If you haven't had a chance to see it, please do. Not too many rock fans have not seen it. Go enjoy it. Go watch it again. I've seen it probably, 4 times? I know you've watched it.
I'm probably up to 14 or 15 by now. Yeah.
But no, it's a great discussion. I appreciate you coming in, Sharise. Thank you very much. Hope to have you on again soon.
Great.
And
Thanks, Jay.
Absolutely. We'll talk about, maybe just dive right into Motley Crue in their whole history next time.
Let's do it.
All right. Thank you very much. Everyone have a good day. Once again, you're listening to The Hook, and this is Jay Scott.
At Progressive, we know there's nothing like the feeling of riding your motorcycle with your buddies on the open road. It's a potent cocktail of thrills, laughter, and pure adrenaline. A feeling that would be impossible to recreate on the radio. Until now. Hit it, sound effects guy!
I'm real proud of you, son.
Wow, that was terrible. Our apologies for even trying. Quote with Progressive and see if you could save with America's #1 motorcycle insurer. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates.
How many discounts does USAA Auto Insurance offer? Too many to say here. Multi-vehicle discount, safe driver discount, new vehicle discount, storage discount, legacy.
How many discounts will you stack up? Tap the banner or visit USAA.com/auto discounts. Restrictions apply.
The new year brings new health goals and wealth goals. Protecting your identity is an important step. Your info is in endless places that could expose you to identity theft, leading to lost funds. LifeLock monitors millions of data points per second. If your identity is stolen, our restoration specialists will fix it, guaranteed, or your money back. Resolve to make identity health and wealth part of your New Year's goals with LifeLock. Save up to 40% your first year. Visit LifeLock.com/podcast. Terms apply.